Hello, and welcome to today's DOCSIS 3.1 certification process update. We're excited to share with you the process improvements and the changes that we've made, which we think makes this a better service for the entire industry and will greatly benefit all the stakeholders. Before we get started, let me remind you that you can ask questions at any time on the GoToMeeting webinar software. There's a questions tab. We'll take those at the end. You can ask them throughout. I'll call for questions again, but that way, if you have something burning as we're going through, drop it in. Let's get started. So let me introduce you to the team that'll be talking today. First, myself, Wiley Nelson. I run our wireless and testing services at Kyrio. I'm joined by Jason Lauer, our Director of Testing Services, Gabby Gordon, our Customer Success Coordinator, Mark Ambrozic, our DOCSIS Project Manager, and Matt Schmidt, our Cable Labs Certification Program Lead, who interfaces with the Cert Board. Today we're going to talk about the things that we've changed and why we've made those changes to the certification process. We're also going to talk about what that new process looks like for you and how it's going to work. Of course, we're going to talk about what fee changes there are as you submit for certification. We're also going to talk about how you engage with Kyrio. We're going to go through the references that we've provided so that you can look these details up at a later date. And then we're going to reserve a majority of our time for question and answer, because I'm sure we'll have quite a few of those. So let's start. What have we improved? We took a look at certification, we talked to a lot of you, and we realized that there were some things that we could do better. The first was cost. So we set out with a new process, a goal of reducing the price. And I'm happy to announce today that for a clean run certification, the fee is 10% reduced from where it was before this. We also were asked to be more communicative. And so through this new process, we're able to provide weekly updates so that you're not left in the dark as to where things are. Third, we've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy into the speed at which we do things. And so for clean runs, we will drastically increase the speed at which you move through certification. One of the ways we did that was to prioritize the test coverage. Basically, we want to discover the highest priority defects sooner, identify those devices, let those manufacturers know of those errors so that they can correct them, get them kind of out of the way so that the ones that are ready to move through certification through a clean run can do so quickly. And that's that last bullet. The workflow, which is improved for customer interaction and a much more predictable program expectation, such that you know if you submit on a certain day and you're going to have a clean run, your device will be done on a certain day. I'm going to let Jason Lauer, our Director of Testing Operations, talk through all of that today. Jason, you want to cover the details?
Thanks, Wiley. Before going into those details, I wanted to share a bit on how we got here. The combined teams within Kyrio and Cable Labs have been working on improvement ideas to certification programs for several months now. Through everyday conversations as well as structured feedback such as surveys, we've obtained a very granular understanding of the needs of our stakeholders in regards to DOCSIS certification. In moving forward with a multi-tiered improvement strategy, we first wanted to review our plan with a consulting firm that we use from time to time. The good news for us was that they agreed with our research and with our approach to solving the underlying problems. At this point, we knew our focus would enable the program to become truly better, faster, and cheaper. So what have we done? Starting with Cert Wave 122 on July 14th at noon, we're moving the program from a success wave with an endless timeline, no defined milestones, and an unorganized churn of testing scope into something much more predictable and efficient. The new Agile wave is based upon an Agile development methodology. We will construct weekly sprints of defined testing scope organized into two phases. The first phase is the core test set and represents the most critical tests for passing certification. By verifying the most critical tests first, we spend the first 4 weeks of testing conducting the highest priority activities. Once the device is successfully moved through core testing, we will start the secondary test set. These remaining sprints will also be structured. As will be the case during core testing, we will be sending you weekly status updates covering the week past and the week ahead. So what will this process look like for you? In step 1 at the upper left, the device submission process has no changes from the way you do things today. It will stay exactly the same. However, the guidelines have been updated, so we strongly recommend you read through them. At step 2, once testing begins at the start of each new week, your device will undergo the current week's planned test coverage. If defects are found in this test set, you will be required to submit an update. You will be notified immediately and our testing of your device will continue. Once successfully completing the roughly 4 weeks of core testing, your device will move on to secondary testing. If defects are found in this phase of testing, you will have 2 choices: to submit an update to the device or to submit for board review with the known defects. Neither of those decisions must be made until all of your testing is complete. The certification, review, and decision-making process are unchanged. Thus, the steps that result from their decision to pass or fail the device will be the same as they are today. So, what will this all cost? The greatest news is that a device successfully conforming to the spec will result in a fee of $135,000. This is a 10% reduction to the current fee, and your device will definitely get to the market faster. If the device should show a defect in the core test set, a $50,000 update fee will be imposed, regardless of the number of defects found in this instance of the cycle. If the device should show defects in the secondary test set, a $60,000 fee will be enacted if you choose to update the device. Lastly, any recertification or resubmission will require the $60,000 fee. All details can be found in the newly released version of the guidelines on our website. It is important to note that these changes described today are only in relation to DOCSIS 3.1, and so the process and fees for DOCSIS 3.0 are not affected. And now I'll turn it over to Gabby to talk more about customer success.
How do you work with us? In large part, it's similar as before, with the exception of a few new folks such as Jason. It's the same team that will engage with you and execute the testing. We do have a few new websites that are continuing to be developed. If you've noticed today, the certification website now directs you to a Kyrio certification website. All of the information that we've collected in the past will remain the same. You're now just directed through a Kyrio portal. The same individuals you have worked with in the past via email and phone continue to be the same individuals you will engage with today. We've added new team members and continue to evaluate ways to enhance our team. We also have a new sales and business development group, as well as developing new customer success channels. Kyrio Testing Services encompasses anything DOCSIS, packet cable, and customized testing. Anything that has been done for certification will continue to be done for certification. That will not change. What can change is how you engage with us. So if you'd like to come in and do some troubleshooting before your device enters into official certification, we can do pre-cert targeted testing. We also have the ability to do stability and performance testing, as well as customized DOCSIS testing. We'd like to provide you with some additional resources today. We do have a new group email that will direct all of your questions or comments to our entire team. The email address is docsis_info@kyrio.com. Here are also the links providing you with the certification information, such as the new Kyrio website for certification, the new certification and guidelines that have been updated, as well as an FAQ and follow-up webinar questions. Also, there's a link to the PST portal that has been directing you in the past to your submission application. I'll hand it over to Wiley for our Q&A.
Thanks, Gabby. I'd also like to point people to the frequently asked questions, which are already up. As questions come in throughout time, we will update those frequently asked questions if there's anything that's missing. So I would ask you to refer back to those periodically as new answers, new questions will be on there. I'd also like to remind people that this webinar and all the questions asked today will be posted on our website, so you can go back and review it at any point in time you need to. With that, let's open it up for questions. I see we've already got a couple coming in. Great. Like I said, I've already got a couple questions coming in here, so let's start off with a few of the easy ones that came in. The first was, will you make these slides available via email and web? Yes, we'll post the slides, the material, the entire webinar, and a recording on our website. And we will update the frequently asked questions as questions come in. The next one, good, a hard question. Can you describe how you got to the costs and why there's such a great fee for future updates. So what we looked at when we started this process was really three goals, as we talked about a little bit. The first was, how do we try and decrease the cost to our customers? How do we try and improve the speed? And then how do we improve kind of the communication and transparency so that people know what's going on? And we approached it with that goal. So what we looked at was devices that were coming in that were requiring multiple updates in the success-based. That was causing really two things. One, if you think about it like a traffic jam, that was a lot of cars on the road. So that was slowing things down and delaying the time frame. And two, when we started to look at what some of those failures were, we realized that some of them were really things that we didn't believe that we should see as failures. So I'm going to give an example of BPI issues or spurious emissions, where we thought that the person who submitted that or the company that submitted that probably didn't do their full QA, and they were asking us to do it. So they were really taking advantage of the success-based scenario such that we would do their QA for them. Those things were gumming up the works, and that wasn't what we set up the success-based certification program to do. So we said, how do we improve that? And how do we appropriately kind of put the burden of cost on the people who are asking for the most amount of work? What we were able to do is say that if you have a clean run, then we can actually do it faster and at a less cost, 10% fee reduction. If you're somebody who needs 3, 4, 5 revisions, then you're going to appropriately bear that financial burden as that comes due, because you're going to actually require us to do a lot more work to help you get certified. And so in this new process, we think that for those who are ready, you'll move through much quicker. For those that aren't ready, we're hoping that some of those people will take a little bit more time in their own QA process and make sure that they're a little bit closer to ready for certification before they actually submit, which is something that we didn't see before. So time, that's one here. How long will it take? So for a clean run, start to finish, it should take 3 months, no more. Now, if you require an update, that's going to pause that time. But if you say submit on a Monday, and we're always going to start our clock on a Monday, 3 months from that date, you will then expect, if it's clean run, that we're complete and finished, and you'll get updates throughout. Let's see. I've got quite a few more coming in. On the secondary failures process, you said we could choose if we wanted to do an update or not. Yes, that's true. Matt, I'm going to hand this one over to you. Why don't you describe kind of the process of a failure in the secondary update and how that does or doesn't go to the cert board?
Yeah. So thanks, Wiley. And the short version is it's a vendor choice. So what we're going to do from our end is supply you with results, let you know what's passing, what's failing, and then from there it's going to be your judgment as to whether you feel like you would benefit and you think it's worthwhile to do another update on that device so that we can provide a cleaner set of results to the cert board, or if you prefer us to just complete the testing, provide the results to the cert board, and allow them to make a decision at the end. It's important to note that even if a device does not pass when we first present those results to the certification board, that device is still eligible for what we call a resubmission or an invited resubmission. So if the cert board doesn't approve it, you still will have the opportunity after that to make updates to the device and have us retest it. It really comes down to a matter of how quickly you want to try to get through this process, since that, of course, would take a little bit more time.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I had another one that probably is best for you. Where can I get a list of the cert board members and who votes on approvals?
Thanks. So the certification board, actually we have multiple certification boards. Each one is made up of representatives from various of our member companies. Each individual is someone who has specific expertise in the area and the types of device they're reviewing. So we actually have separate certification boards for different types of devices. The exact membership of that certification board is something that we need to keep private. We want to avoid any lobbying of individual cert board members for devices when they go through. We want the decisions to be made on a purely objective manner without getting into any conflict of interest type of issues. So the exact individuals, unfortunately, we cannot reveal, but what I can say is, again, they are experts in their fields, drawn from various of our member companies to review the results on these devices.
Okay, great, thank you. What are the new customer success channels? Not 100% sure I understand this one, but let me tee it up a little bit as a slightly different question and then hand it over to Gabby. So in part of this process, we've decided as Kyrio to look at the people who submit for certification as our customers and as our stakeholders in this process. And so we care greatly about them achieving success. And one of the ways that we wanted to help do that was increase the communication, increase the transparency, and provide more channels to come in to ask us questions and to make sure that you feel like you're very well informed. We've also, as Gabby mentioned briefly on the slides, now have a sales and business development channel. So we're actively trying to pull in more business that is outside of certification. That's a little outside of the webinar today. If anybody has questions about that, we'd love to talk to you. Gabby, can you tell the folks here a little bit more about kind of what customer success means and what communication specific to certification might look like going forward?
Sure, thanks, Wiley. So going forward, we'd like to take a more proactive approach with your submissions. We will be notifying you upon arrival of the devices. We'll be notifying you upon completed check-in, and then once the testing has started. After that, we aim to provide you with weekly status updates. These could be standardized updates, just letting you know that the work and testing is still going on and no issues have been found, or we could be notifying you of an issue found that we are further investigating. We're looking at how we can provide more transparency to you in the percentage of testing complete that will allow you to understand and receive a more predictable timeline as to when your submission will be complete. But overall, the communication will be a lot more proactive, and it will be from our team, primarily from me and Lisa and Mark as well, going forward.
Great, thank you, Gabby. We've got a couple questions in here that I'm going to try and generalize and group together about flex submissions and time frame and when you can submit. So in the new process, which again launches at afternoon on July 14th, basically you can submit whenever you want. We're on a kind of constant cycle of bulk testing devices. By bulk testing and by coming to what is a very well-defined cycle, we actually think we'll be able to generate more efficiencies there, reduce time and cost in the near future, and that's something that we're going to continue to work towards. But that means that a device can come in at any point in time in that cycle, and we can take it. So the cert waive process will remain in place because that will relate to what specification you're submitting against. As the spec gets updated, you will see new cert waives that say this basically relates to that specification. But once you're in a cert waive, you can submit at any point in time. And again, if you submit on a Tuesday, we're going to start that device on the following Monday. If you submit on a Friday, we're going to start that device on the following Monday because we have kind of week-long defined cycles. Here's one. How long do you have to do pre-testing? Where is this located? So one of the things that you'll note is that Kyrio can now do more than just certification. So if a submitter wants to come in and say, just have a specific phi test that they can't quite get diagnosed in their own lab done, we can do that. You can do that. It can take as long as you want before you officially submit for certification. That's something that you can kind of elect to do, or you can say you feel like you've done all the testing in your lab and submit for certification the first time. One of the reasons that we wanted to be able to do that and we felt comfortable moving to this new process was that if somebody needs to do a little bit of troubleshooting in advance, they now have an avenue to do that, and we can do that with them. The second part of that one, where's this located? All the testing will be done in our Louisville facility lab, which we're also open if you want to come and take a tour anytime you're here. We'd be happy to take you through. Let's see, we have a question about the guidelines. New guidelines plus the frequently asked questions plus this webinar all posted. Well, the webinar is not posted on the website yet, but the guidelines and frequently asked questions are, and they're updated. Guidelines will be updated right after this webinar. Let's see. Here's one outside of the scope, but I think it's kind of appropriate because it touches on how we can do other different things. Question about if Kyrio is considering offering remote PHY or remote McFly certification. And I'm going to hand that one over to Matt, and then I think Gabby might have a thought to contribute there too.
So the short answer is yes. Cable Labs is planning to offer, oh, there we go. I think I wasn't live. Short answer is yes. Cable Labs is planning to offer or establish a qualification program for remote PHY devices. So devices complying with our remote PHY specifications would sit out in the field. We're currently working on defining the exact scope of that qualification program. And then, of course, once we establish it, Kyrio will be conducting the testing for that program like they do with our other DOCSIS-related certification and qualification programs.
Part of the remote McFly testing has come up in the past, and Kyrio is looking into some sort of validation testing for remote McFly. If you are interested in that, please contact me or any member of the team that's on the webinar today, Jason Lauer as well, and we can review your options for remote McFly validation testing going forward.
Great, thank you. Another one that's a little outside of the scope, but I think an appropriate, since we're kind of touching on other things. Would I work with Kyrio for packet cable testing? Mark Ambrozic, you want to take this one?
Yes, so much as we've mentioned in the past, and also on this on the slides, is that the team that is doing the testing is the same team that's been doing it all along. So for packet cable in specific, if we wanted to do pre-testing, then we would, as we are currently doing now, Kyrio contracts with the Accentus lab in Europe to do packet cable, and so that would be both for the any pre-testing that you want done and or for the certification program in general.
Thanks, Mark. Kind of sticking on that topic, here's one. How do you handle EuroDOCSIS 3.1 certification? Is it in the same way? I'm going to hand that over to Lisa Warther to take this question.
Yeah, so the EuroDOCSIS is going to be handled the same as the testing for our DOCSIS 3.1 CMs. So it would be following the same routine here that we've been discussing today.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Sorry, we're kind of bouncing around as we're trying to group questions together and as we're reading them and answering them. Another follow-up question on pre-testing. How many devices are allowed for pre-testing? So pre-testing would be a customized scope. We could test one device for one specific test case. We could test 10 devices for 20 different test cases. We can work directly with you to define that and define the appropriate economics and price for that. Here's another one. What if a failure is caused by a silicon issue? Is there still a fee? Update fee charged? Yes. Let's go back and review. So in the first phase, the core testing, those are tests that we have acknowledged and worked with the cert board to say that those are going to be automatic failures. So anything that fails there would never pass through certification. They would never approve it. And so, yes, an update will be required, and an update fee in accordance will be required. Now, on the secondary phase, if there's an issue, then that will be up to the member, or excuse me, the submitting customer, the submitting vendor, to decide if they want to present those results to the certification board or if they want to fix that so that they can present effectively clean results to the certification board. And Matt, I think you had another thought you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, an additional little bit of clarification there. So the question kind of related to a silicon issue specifically. So it is worth noting there's a little bit of a difference between a software update and a hardware update. Software updates are no problem. Those can be done through, based on, of course, required if it's a failure in the first phase and up at vendor discretion if it's a failure in the second phase. If a hardware change is needed, those we do need to check with the certification board if they occur during the second phase to see if they're okay, essentially, with that change. If it's a minor change, a small component here and there, the expectation is they would be okay with that. If it's a major change, such as replacing the core silicon that the device is built around, while I will not speak for the certification board because it is ultimately their decision, I would say that it is much less likely that they would accept that as an update to the device and would view that instead as a new device requiring a separate submission. So it is important to note that during the second phase there is a difference between a hardware update versus a software update. Hardware updates do need to get approved by the certification board.
Great, thank you, Matt. Here's one that I'm going to take, asking if Kyrio now runs all certification duties for cable labs. Thus, manufacturers will be paying Kyrio exclusively moving forward. And the answer to that is yes. So Kyrio, all the certification and testing work is now done through Kyrio. It's important to note that it's still a Cable Labs developed specification, and that'll probably be the way it works for future specifications as well, such as full duplex DOCSIS and R5 when those come out. Kyrio will do the work, and so you will pay Kyrio. It's still a Cable Labs certification board decision. We don't make the decision as to whether something passes certification or not. We do the work, we present the results to the certification board, and then we relay those results to the submitting vendor. Appreciate the efforts to be faster and cheaper. Do you expect more improvement changes beyond those discussed today? Yes, absolutely. This is but the first step in the kind of journey that we're on. As we look to improve our service to our customers, we're going to be constantly looking at ways to be faster, cheaper, more communicative, and do better testing for everyone. So no defined timeline for when we'll step back and have another review, but I expect that at least within annually, hopefully faster, we'll be able to come back and say we've gained a bunch more efficiencies and we can adjust the fees accordingly and maybe adjust the process accordingly if we think we've got a way to make it much faster, better, and cheaper.
Wiley, it looks like we have a number of questions regarding the detailed test plans and whether or not we can provide a scope of the test plans. I don't know if Mark wants to jump in and provide answers to the detailed test plans and what we'll be laying out for you all going forward.
So much like as we've done always, right? So Kyrio is no different now than we were previously for when we were under the banner of Cable Labs, right? So we test to the spec. The vendors create their devices, test to the spec. So the requirements that are laid out in the specification, that's all the same. So the ATPs, as an example, are available just as they always have been based on NDA, and that is the scope under which we generally test. Now, the ATPs are a guideline to testing just as they've always been. For the first phase of testing, what is most important is what we're going to focus on with regard to the types of requirements that we're going to that is going to be used in that first 4 weeks. So it's initialization for the CM, so it's all the requirements around scanning for initialization and reinitialization of the Mac. For Mac requirements, it's software upgrade, transmission rules, channel bonding for 3.0 and 3.1, both up and down, and the ability to handle outstanding requests. With regard to PHY, it's the things that you have come to know as very critical items. Those are downstream input to the CM, upstream transmit power, error rate performance, upstream emissions, on and off burst, and proactive network maintenance. With regard to security, it will be requirements around AES. For service flow, it'll be requirements around active queue management, and for OSS, it'll be requirements about how you handle the TLVs in a config file. These are the areas that are considered most critical, and that's why they're in the first 4 weeks. As for the second set of tests, so to speak, the next after you successfully pass the first battery of tests, it's as you've come to know the certification to date. So it's all the other requirements to get to a point where the DOCSIS board can make an educated decision about your device.
I've got a couple questions coming in here about DOCSIS 3.0. DOCSIS 3.0 and packet cable, that process hasn't changed at all. Same fees, same process as before. We've also got a couple more questions on how to submit for EuroDOCSIS 3.1 certification and the cost for EuroDOCSIS 3.1 certification. Let me hand that one back over to Mark.
Yeah, so when it comes to 3.1, there actually is no Euro-based 3.1, right? What the part about EuroDOCSIS that is part of the 3.1 spec is all about backwards compatibility. And so it's no different than you have submitted to this date. So all the 3.1 testing is done at the Louisville office, and the backwards compatibility by board direction is done at the Exentis office in Ghent, Belgium.
And the fee for 3.1, just so we're completely clear, Euro 3.1?
Oh, it's the same as North American DOCSIS, so there's no difference between the two fees.
Thank you. And Matt, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and Mark, I think cover this. The part to be clear about is there is no such thing as EuroDOCSIS 3.1. There is DOCSIS 3.1 certification. Within that, devices have the option of supporting either DOCSIS 3.0 backward compatibility or EuroDOCSIS 3.0 backward compatibility. It's one of the questions on the application form when devices are submitted. They need to define which backward compatibility that they support, and we will test for whichever backward compatibility that device is supported for, report that whichever backward compatibility that device supports. It is, however, the same program, it is the same fee, it is the same timeline. When there is EuroDOCSIS backward compatibility, some of the testing is performed by our partners over in Europe as a good place to get that done, but it's still the same program, same fee, same process.
Great, thank you, Matt. We've got one question coming. Does the certification process cover a view to the QoS and QoE of the service being delivered to the end customer, and how is this handled, and what standards does Kyrio view as important to this domain? Mark?
Yeah, so QoS is always done relative to the DOCSIS requirements. So those requirements are well specified when it comes to service flows. And so as the normal part of the certification process, we test those requirements that are outlined for service flow on the CM, and most of the service flow is relative to QoS, so those are where the requirements are handled.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We have a question coming in. I'm going to generalize it a little bit about the level of automation and the vendors that we use for automation. We want to stay vendor neutral on our testing solution side. So the question essentially asks if one of the vendors covers 100% of the test bed. And I will say that no, none of the automation vendors cover 100% of the test bed for us to date. We use several vendors for our automation. We can also run every single test manually and actually confirm every failure manually. And then we develop our own scripting in-house for some of the stuff that we feel like we need. Matt, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah. And again, this is something that I believe Mark even mentioned earlier. It's important to remember that we are testing for compliance to the specification. We are not testing for compliance to a particular test tool or to a particular test plan. As such, we always reserve the right to test to the specification in whatever manner is appropriate to test a particular requirement. So none of you should ever feel obligated to use a particular tool or to use a particular testing approach, as long as you feel like you've covered and validated that your device complies with the specification, because that is always the ultimate guide in what we are testing for, is to determine whether devices comply with the requirements in the specification.
Great, thanks, Matt. Here's a pretty specific one. Is L2 VPN spec compliance included in the DOCSIS 3.1 certification, or is this a custom test? Does Kyrio offer L2 VPN compliance test suite, and how is it priced? Mark, why don't I hand this one? Oh, Matt's raising his hand. Let me give it to Matt.
Yeah, so no, L2 VPN testing is not included as a part of DOCSIS 3.1 testing. And yes, we do offer an L2 VPN certification program. L2 VPN is actually not DOCSIS version specific, so a device that's based on DOCSIS 3.0 or DOCSIS 3.1 could be submitted for layer 2 VPN certification testing. So it's not tied to either one of those. The only requirement, of course, is it needs to be a part of a DOCSIS certified device. So you could submit it all at once and ask for a combination of DOCSIS plus L2 VPN certification in a single submission, or you could actually come in as two separate submissions. You could come in initially for DOCSIS 3.0 or 3.1 or EuroDOCSIS 3.0 certification, and then submit the same device again for L2 VPN testing. However, in that second option, is important to note, it does need to be the same device. And by that I mean same hardware and software combination for both submissions. But yes, we do absolutely offer that program as a separate add-on piece to any of our other DOCSIS certification programs.
Great, thanks, Matt. Here's another fairly specific one. Could you please confirm if the test tools could be delivered as is, like TEPS tool? Mark, you want to take this one?
Yes, so as always, as we've done in the past with Cable Labs, which is no difference, any test tool, which we call TEPS, right, text execution packages, that are developed by Cable Labs are available to the NDA community. So there's a release that's done that matches up to the ECN cutoff dates for that particular wave. That's how they're kind of structured. So yes, those will be available just as they've always been available. Now, relative to the other vendors that Wiley mentioned, those are all very specific to those manufacturers of the test tools, such as Averna, and those are separate. You would have to work with them separately to obtain that particular test platform.
One other thing worth noting with the automation that we've been developing for DOCSIS 3.1, we actually have a group of manufacturers that decided to join and work with us to help develop that automation. So there is a group there that others can join if they're willing to contribute to that effort. Today, the automation itself is only being made available to those that are actively contributing to the development of that automation. At some point in the future, we expect we would likely make that DOCSIS 3.1 automation available, as we have with other stuff. That is TBD, but today it's only being made available to those that are actively contributing to the development of that automation.
Thanks, Matt. Here's another one on communication. Who is the owner to provide a status update of the testing at Cable Labs, and how often will the status update be provided? Gabby?
Thanks, Kylie. So once again, we will have weekly status updates reported out to the vendor community and to manufacturers who have active submissions with us. Those status updates will be provided by me. However, if there are issues found that we are investigating, Mark Ambrosic or Lisa Werther may step in to provide more in-depth communication about issues that have been uncovered and how to proceed forward.
Actually, there is a question regarding what CMTSs we use, and we actually have, I think we pretty much have every CMTS manufacturer represented in our lab, and we do not have any specific dedicated CMTS vendor that we use.
Great, thanks Lisa. I hadn't gotten down to that one. I don't know that I see a whole lot more in here that we need to answer. Let's see, does Kyrio have a test option for the RIP protocol? Mark, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so with regard to routing protocols such as RIP, we do not offer a program that focuses on those types of protocols.
Matt, you had?
Yeah, and the reason for that is that Cable Labs doesn't have a specification that defines a particular routing protocol, so there's no Cable Labs certification program for that. That said, one of the advantages, one of the reasons why we've established Kyrio to do certification and other testing programs is, unlike Cable Labs, they're not bound to only offer testing programs tied to Cable Labs specifications. So if that's a particular type of testing that you or another manufacturer would like help with, I would encourage you to reach out to Gabby and the rest of the team to discuss what those needs are, because it's very likely that Kyrio could help you with your testing needs.
Thanks, Matt. Here's one specific to the, we got a couple more CMTS questions coming in, so let's try and take a couple of these. I understand we can't know the detailed test plans. Sorry, my screen's skipping around. I understand we can't know the detailed test plans ahead of time, but can we get a roadmap of expected DOCSIS 3.1 CMTS test capabilities for the CERT testing? This is still dynamic and will help in prioritizing our CERT testing. Matt, you want to take this?
Yeah, I can take that one. So we certainly cannot talk about the roadmaps of individual manufacturers and what features they may be providing. So you certainly need to reach out with them. What we've been doing and what we've done in the past and will continue to use, as Lisa noticed, we have a variety of different manufacturers of DOCSIS 3.1 CMTSs in our lab, and we use a cross-section of those CMTSs to ensure that we get good coverage of all the different features that we're attempting to test a DOCSIS 3.1 cable modem against. So for that reason, this is not a case where a manufacturer can designate they'd like to have a particular CMTS used, because generally we need to use a cross-section of devices, both to ensure complete coverage, complete overlapping coverage, but also just to keep this process moving through as rapidly as possible. We need to use as many devices in parallel as we can throughout this testing. Rest assured, though, again, we are ultimately testing to the spec, and we are being very careful to ensure that if we discover a failure, it is a real issue and not just an interoperability issue with a particular CMTS manufacturer.
Thanks, Matt. Kind of a follow-up on that one. Somebody asked, can we choose what CMTSs we want to test against? Matt?
Yeah, and I was trying to cover that one at the same time there, so thanks for highlighting that, Wiley. The short answer again is no, both due to the requirement that we get as much stuff going in parallel as possible so that we can meet these accelerated timelines that we're talking about today, but as well as making sure that we get good cross-feature coverage, and we like to be able to test the same thing on more than one platform, especially when we find issues, again, so we can make sure that it really is a spec issue.
Yeah, and just to note, that's for the certification program. If you want any private testing with Kyrio, we can absolutely, if you have specific test against a specific CMTS or device testing, we can do that on a custom basis, but not in the certification program.
Here's a question came in. Who might be the owner for contact on RFI qualification program? Is there a mailing list for this? So we mentioned it briefly before. RFI qualification is not yet started. That program will get released. Gabby is heavily involved. Gabby, why don't you talk a little bit about where it's at and who to contact?
Sure. So right now there are several remote PHY reflectors that have updates to them on a monthly basis that discuss the ongoing interops that we have been running. In July, towards the end of July into August, we will start our first dry run. I would suggest that if you want to receive part of those monthly updates that will eventually include any information about a qualification program, you reach out to either myself or Jason Lauer, and we can get you on one of the remote PHY reflectors to get updated about upcoming qualification program information.
Thanks, Gabby. I'm going to remind the audience we still have about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to close the webinar. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get through every single question. We will respond to every single person with an answer to their question. Give us a day or two, as I think we've gotten more than 100 questions in the last 45 minutes. And so we will get back to you directly. But we do have a few more. We have a question specific to older CMTS inventory. Do you have the older end-of-life CMTSs like the Big Band CUDA, older Motorola CMTSs, and older Cisco CMTSs? Mark?
So yes, so we do have an inventory of previously qualified equipment. Now, there is a caveat to that in that the development on those CMTSs, such as the Big Band, stopped a very long time ago. So the device that we have is functional. It has limited use only because of where the industry currently is. That would be true of the older Motorola's and of the older Cisco's as well. So we do have them. We occasionally use them mostly now for 3.0 CMTSs, but at the same time we have updated equipment from the CMTS manufacturers that gives you a better picture of your device's behavior. But as part of Kyrio, if you needed something and we have it, we could do some sort of customized work surrounding the need that you have for those older CMTSs.
Thanks, Mark. Here's another very specific question. Are you set up to test equipment designed for direct HFC network installation, i.e. 90 VAC power over coax?
Yeah, so not directly, right? I mean, we do have the ability to power the outdoor devices over the HFC network, but we don't have a program to test specific equipment for that would hang on the outside of the poles. So that would be something we would have to discuss, and we may be able to meet your need, but it would have to be a customized kind of set of work.
Thanks, Mark. So with the last few minutes, I want to remind everybody that we will post this webinar, the full recording with all the questions, on our website shortly. We already have some frequently asked questions posted up there. We will update that as we get more questions coming in. We have a DOCSIS_info@Kyrio.com email address specifically set up for questions related to this new process. Please feel free to ask questions there, and as we get things that we haven't answered, we'll add those to frequently asked questions. The same people that you were largely working with before can help you with questions, and we look forward to working with you. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to my team for taking the time to answer the questions and working on this, and we look forward to working with you all. Have a great day.